Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. We are thrilled that you're able to join us today. My name is Liz Rios, if you don't know, and we're having a conversation today about menopause, preparing for the change. Now, I wear a lot of hats, but today I'm coming to you simply as a woman in my 50s. I am delighted to have you join us as we embark on an important discussion, a three-part webinar journey. And I hope you can join us for all three of them. But if not, I'm glad you're live, or maybe you're catching this later. Now, why did I want to do a webinar on a topic that is so often not discussed openly and publicly? Well, because recently I went to the OBGYN and she told me that I have dipped my toes into the menopausal waters. And it's been a trip. Not easy. And I told her if that's dipping my toes, then I don't want a full swim. I've been having pain. I've been having some issues with my memory, which I don't love because I have a lot of things to remember. And it's just been difficult. So I started to question myself, like, what can I do better? The last time that I remember having a serious discussion about menopause was years ago at a retreat that I did for my home church and the Center for Emerging Female Leadership. And Dr. Elizabeth Conde Frazier was the guest speaker. And at that retreat, she started talking about herbs and various different homeopathic things that you can do to prepare for menopause. But guess what? I was in my 30s. I was like, I have a long way to go for that. And I didn't really pay that much attention to that. But now, as I have started to dip my toes in those menopausal waters, I realized that I need to know what's going on with my body. Besides the fog, the brain fog, besides the pain, besides the weight gain, can we talk about that for a minute? Yes, weight gain. So all the things that you used to do before that never made you gain weight, all of a sudden, when you're in those menopausal waters, you start to see that those pounds are not going anywhere. But seriously, menopause is a significant and often transformative stage in a woman's life. And just too many of us don't talk about it. We're all going to go through it. Some of you may be going through it right now. And we figured, why not have a discussion on it? It's common issues, different things that are going on in our communities. So our goal today with my guest speaker is to equip you with valuable information, practical strategies, and a supportive community. Those people that are going to be coming on, I hope you're on now, and those people that may comment later, and maybe even ask questions to our guest speaker later. Whether you're just beginning to experience the signs of menopause, like myself, or are well into your journey, this space today and for the next two webinars are for you. Thank you for being here, for your openness, and for your willingness to learn and to share. So let's make the most out of this time. No embarrassment, no crazy questions. This is all good. This is for our learning. So let's get started. I want to introduce you today to Coach Sylvia Arello. Sylvia is a life breakthrough coach, a human resources professional at a major corporation. She's an author and a speaker. She is also the president and founder of Women's Empowerment Services, and she's my friend for over 15 years. Her mission is to create an environment where women are empowered to fulfill their unique purpose. However, if you talk to her, she would probably tell you that her most rewarding assignment is being a wife to Miguel and a mom to her 3 girls. So before we get into questions, let's welcome Sylvia. Hey, Sil.
Hey, Liz, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh my gosh, it's my pleasure. I am passionate about this subject.
I
Um,
know.
and I'm not dipping my toes the way you did. I'm swimming in the ocean of this. So
Right. You have a head start. You have a head start
I
with it.
had a head start.
Right.
Exactly.
Which is that's another point that's really important because some people think that if they're younger, because you're younger than me, and you already had a head start in this. So that's, something to talk about as well. But before we get into that, I want to ask you, what made you become a menopause coach?
Exactly that, Liz. I feel like people are not talking enough about it. And within our communities, and you and I, when we get together, we talk about everything, right? And one of the things that we were discussing the last time was how, why didn't we hear this from our mothers or from the previous generation? Like, why didn't they tell us that this was coming? It was almost like a taboo, right? It's
Mhm.
like women were suffering through it as opposed to discussing it the way we're doing today. So I think, it was doing a disservice for some of us. It's like a rude awakening to this transition in our lives because it's no one told us about this or just mentioned a couple of things, right? So to me, it was important for myself to get educated on it, and it's important for me. I have 3 daughters, and it was important that I show them and I model for them, right? What this stage is, just like all the other stages we go through.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is really important, and it's great. I mean, I don't have. I was a, I'm a boy mom, so I didn't really think about that, and then I didn't have my mom really talk about any of that, or any of my titis or anything like that. It was just something that is not discussed. You just go through it,
Right.
and that's. So, what are some of the common signs and symptoms of menopause? Because I would tell you, I would say for the last month, my arm has been hurting me, and when I wake up, I feel like I have like a frozen elbow,
Mm.
and just been a bit. I'm not happy. So I'm not happy. So tell us, what are some of the signs and symptoms that people
I
can look out for?
I got to tell you, Liz, what we hear is you hit 50 and it's like you won the golden ticket, right? It's like you don't care about things anymore. Life is lighter, right? All of a sudden, things that people say about you, you just, it just falls off the shoulders. It's like, however, they fail to mention that your body doesn't care anymore either, right? So there's things that you start to lose. It all of a sudden you don't care. Your body doesn't care about sleep, doesn't care about focus, doesn't care about your hair, and let's not even talk about your sex drive,
Oh my
right?
goodness!
So if you're not going to believe this, but there's over 30 symptoms or more that they found that are linked to menopause.
Wow.
So there's so many things out there. And the first thing I do want to say is I'm not a physician. I'm
Mhm.
not here to play a physician, right? So let's just get that straight. I am a fellow person that has been trained to be a menopause coach, to come alongside women that are going through this. Um, but I'm not a trained physician, which you're going to hear me talk a couple of times today that you really should have your own team, right? But to answer your question, so there's a lot of symptoms, Liz. I mean, just to name a few: hot flashes, brain fog, right?
Mhm.
Night sweats. What about mood swings, right? Vaginal dryness. Let's go there, right? Changes in libido, like I was mentioning to you before. Weight gain, you mentioned that. Sleep problems, memory problems, right? Joint pains, headaches. I mean, the list goes on and on about this.
Yeah.
Dr. Mary Claire Haver wrote a really good book that just came out last month, and it's called The New Menopause. And I can't stress it enough how much you should get this book, because she goes in depth as far as, like, you look up your condition and she tells you
Mhm.
from a clinical standpoint what are some options for you to do, or what are some medications for you to take. But Liz, it's a long list. It's a long list.
So if you're watching there, just take a breath. Let's just take a breath. Let's just take a collective breath. We're gonna make it through. We're gonna make it through.
We are.
It's a long list, and we're gonna share some book recommendations later on towards the end of the episode. But I do think that it's important for us to think about some of these symptoms that Sylvia mentioned, because sometimes we overlook them, or just say, ah, that's nothing, and sometimes they are something. It's an indicator of something. So that's when you should tell people, your doctor, about it. And I know that on your Instagram you talk a lot about various different things, and recently I saw you say that you have a symptom checklist.
I do.
So can you share a little bit about that? Because I think it's important for people to be able to talk about that with their doctors.
Exactly. And that's the whole reason why I developed that symptom checklist, Liz, because I just mentioned that we have brain fog. It means that we forget, right? And because today you're feeling the frozen shoulder, maybe in a couple of weeks you forgot that you had a frozen shoulder, right? So when you go to your doctor. So the purpose of the checklist is put down what it is you're feeling, when you're feeling it, how often are you feeling it? So when you bring it with you, you tell your doctor, I want to talk to you about a few things. And on there, I also have where you put that, you write down what she said, right? So when you get home and a year from now or 6 months from now, you go, oh, wow, I had the same symptom last year when I came to talk to her, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was partly so you can remember, and also so you can keep track of your symptoms.
Mm. I think that's really important, because you're right. We forget. And of course, if we have brain fog, there's probably a 90% chance you're going to forget what you need to tell your doctor when you get there. So that's really important. And can you mention to us, like, what's that age range again that women may start to experience these menopausal changes?
So, okay, so this, now we're getting into the nitty gritty, right? Because it comes in phases. So every woman is different, but let me walk you through the phases, Liz, and you'll see the age range within each phase. So you mentioned perimenopause, right? So perimenopause is the period where your ovarian function is ending. As sad as that sound, right? So what happens is some women, when they're entering this stage, is they see irregular periods, very heavy periods are happening. There's fluctuation in your mood, there's fluctuation in your sleep, but it's not consistent. It's some days are like this, or some periods are like this, right? So what's happening right there is that your estrogen is going up and down at
Mm,
any moment of time, because you're perimenopause. You're not in the menopause stage yet. So
mm,
this is why blood work is really hard to diagnose when someone is on perimenopause,
mm,
because it depends when the blood work is drawn.
mhm,
You may have a surge of estrogen that day when you went to get your blood work, or you may be really low. So it blood work doesn't really give you a clear picture. What they say is your symptoms, Liz, is what matters. Your
mm,
doctor should be paying attention to what you're feeling and what you're saying, as opposed to the blood work, because it's you're the one that's feeling through this. That's the most reliable. So perimenopause normally starts in your 40s, right? And some women even are in their mid 30s, to be honest with you. This is why regular annual exams are so important for women to go through and have built that medical history to see what is normal for you and what is not. I'll give you an example. In my 30s, my sleep was like gone. Like I would go days without sleeping. And that was so out of character for me, because I was the type that I can sleep 2 naps a day, hey, for the nappers, and sleep my night very well. Like I had no issues with that. But all of a sudden now my sleep is gone. And there was a big dip in my progesterone in my 30s.
wow.
That who would have thought that that was it? But I happened to have a doctor that was very knowledgeable in hormones in women. So he was able to do the tests that found out that my progesterone was close to zero. And this is why I wasn't getting consistent sleep. And when it comes to history, my mother was one that had very heavy periods and developed anemia from those periods.
Mm.
So in my 40s, I started to get very heavy menstrual cycles to the
Wow.
point where it was just like I was at my wit's end when I had to go somewhere because I didn't know whether I was going to have an accident out and about, right? And let's not talk about how drained you feel when you lose that much blood. So it's definitely something for us to look out for. And perimenopause, the average time is about a 4-year period, but the range is between 2 and 10 years, Liz.
Oh my goodness.
So you don't know where you are in that process, right? For an extended period of time. Wait, no pun intended there, right? And then the next phase is what's called menopause, right? So first you go through perimenopause, then you go through menopause. And menopause is a funny thing because menopause is marked in almost like one day in time. And the reason I say that is because menopause is diagnosed when you've gone 12 months without a period, without a menstrual cycle. 12 months, right?
Wow.
If you go through let's say 6 months without a cycle and then you get a cycle, guess what? The clock starts all over again.
Oh wow.
Have to go through a 12-month period, right? Of that. Um, and that's what happens when your average age is about 51. But some women go through menopause between the age of 45 to 55. So women in their 40s can be ignoring like these symptoms that's going through their cycles, their monthlies, right? And then comes the post-menopause phase, right? And just like it means, now you're past that 12-month window. And now I say this is where the real fun begins. Because when you were in perimenopause, you still have estrogen. It's coming down, right? But there's still some of it. So sometimes you feel a little better than other days. Sometimes you're moodier than other days, right? But there's surges. Once you go through menopause, it's gone. They're gone. Those hormones are not nowhere to be found. So in my instance, I actually had an ablation done where they burn or they freeze the uterus because my periods were so heavy that I developed anemia that I almost needed a blood transfusion. I knew
Oh,
I didn't want to have children anymore, so I actually opted for this ablation. So I didn't have a period. So how do you measure someone that doesn't get normal periods if they've stopped for 12 months, right?
yes.
That's where the blood work comes in because the blood at that point there is no menstrual cycle, so there is no surge up and down of these um, these hormones that you feel. So what happens post menopause? Post menopause, now your body's looking for that estrogen. It's like, where to go? I need it for so many things. From the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, your organs use some type of sex hormones that's called hormones that we use.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that period of time is 5 to 10 years postmenopausal that you're going to have symptoms.
Mm.
And the symptoms that I want us to talk about could be serious risks is osteoporosis, that you think that it's an old lady's illness,
Mm-hmm.
but you got to start taking care of it now.
That's right.
There's coronary artery disease, right? Your cardiovascular issues. There's something to be said that there comes a stage where men normally are the ones that pass away from heart attacks, right? From cardiovascular issues. And then
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden that flips and women become the higher risk. Well, guess what's happening? There's no more estrogen. That's why our arteries are thickening up, and that's why we're more susceptible to heart attacks. So the other thing is insulin resistance, pre-diabetic. You've been fine all along, and all of a sudden now the doctor tells you, "Hey, you're either at the verge or you're pre-diabetic," and you're going, "Where did this come from? Why is this happening to me?" Right? And then I'll hit one last one, and you'll love this one, Liz. Visceral fat. Have you ever heard of that?
Oh yeah. For some reason, oh, Facebook be targeting me with visceral fat. I'm like, you trying to tell me something, Facebook?
Visceral fat, which is right the midsection fat, which comes with its own risks, right? Because it's also putting more pressure on the heart.
Yeah.
So just to put it into perspective, premenopausal women have a 5 to 8% visceral fat, right? When you hit menopause, that jumps to 15 to 20%. And you haven't changed your diet, you haven't changed anything. And all of a sudden, you feel like your husband has a little bit more to hug, right? There's a little bit more around there. And the joke is that, women that used to be pear shaped all of a sudden are an apple shape now, right? Because there is this midsection. Um, so I can't stress it enough that you need to do your annual exams, because here's what's important. And here's why doctors haven't taken menopause very seriously, because a lot of these things can mask as something else.
Mm-hmm.
So you've always had issues with your thyroid, guess
Mm-hmm.
what? Some of these things are common symptoms for hypothyroidism, right? So your doctor say, "Oh, it's just your thyroid, just, you'll get over it." Or I've had the issue where my endocrinologist is like, just live through it. It's something that women have to go through. And I'm like, I have to live through this?
I know.
No, right? Like, I think we've come to a state where we're like, enough with the suffering. If there is a medical option or there's other options, I want to know about it. And that's why having a strong medical team is so important. Have a primary care physician that you trust, that knows your history,
Mm-hmm.
and then also get an OBGYN, and not an OB, sorry, a GYN that actually focuses on menopause.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is the menopause.org. You
Mm-hmm.
can go in there, put your zip code, and it will tell you who are the doctors in your area that actually specialize in menopause. So talk to people that actually know what they're talking about, and don't dismiss it, because what I've heard Dr. Mary Claire say is that they get a few hours of training on menopause. When they go to become an OBGYN, they only get a few hours on the menopause. Everything else is every other stage of a woman's life. Yet there's 40 million women going through menopause right now.
Mm.
It's like a third of your life is menopause. How could we ignore that part of our lives? So, um, a couple of things I want you to focus on. Your doctor should be sending you to get bone density tests. So, how do you know, or how do you take care of osteoporosis before it forms? Get those bone density tests every 2 years. Your doctor should be sending you for that. So, when she's sending you or he's sending you to get your mammogram done, they can at the same time add in a bone density test. A calcium score. I don't know if you've heard of what a calcium score is. Calcium score is a test that's not normally covered by insurance, but it's not very expensive. And it's almost like a CAT scan that they put you through, but yet it takes pictures of the different layers of your heart, and it checks your arteries to make sure that there's no calcification in it. The test is about $99. When I got it done, insurances didn't cover it. I don't know if it covers it now, but I think it's worth looking into. And know your A1C numbers. It's so important that you know what it is and how is it moving, because that's also an indicator of menopause, right?
Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned all that stuff because I feel like I've been in this process now for the last year and a half. So I did a live screen test with me and my husband did that just to make sure that whatever they can find, just tell us. We'd rather be preventative, right? And so we did that. Everything was fine. But, I think one of the things, especially for women of color, that we have to remember is that sometimes we have to really advocate for ourselves because some of these doctors are just kind of like perfunctory. You just go and do this, right? They don't really take time to ask you questions. Thankfully, my OBGYN is amazing and she does, and she stays with me. I never feel rushed. And if you feel rushed, try to get somebody else. And I know that it's really hard to find people like that, but it is really important because you have questions, and sometimes it's always good to look up certain things. But I always joke around, right? Like Dr. Google, WebMD kind of stuff sometimes worries you more than it. But it's good to have that in the back of your mind, like, okay, this is something to discuss with the doctor. I know for myself, I joke with my husband that I was supposed to be a man. No, because I when she did my yep,
Testosterone
a
levels.
testosterone, she told me I had a lot of testosterone, and then I joked with her too. I said, "Oh, so I was supposed to be a guy?" And she was like, "No, what
We
that actually means is that you have so much estrogen that it's turning into testosterone." And I remember hearing back somewhere along the journey that if I had testosterone, my menopause wasn't going to be as difficult. And again, I just feel like if I'm just tippy toeing into these menopausal waters, and I'm already getting the brain fog, I'm already getting the aches, and I just feel like I feel the change. I feel different. I feel slower, which I do not like because I got things to do.
right. Yeah.
And so I feel like I want to manage this as well as possible. So and you talked about weight. One of the sisters watching, she said, "Mija, ni la faja me ayuda."
No, no. Ni la
Ni la faja, I get it, sis. I get it, sis.
First of all, you might pull out your shoulder trying to pull up a faja, you know?
That's right. That's right. We had a comedian in our comedy show that talked about the very important process of putting a faja on. And so these are realities that we've been dealing with anyway, just as women, right? Because
Right.
sometimes we have a little pouch before menopause hits, but it's the reality of it hitting in menopause time. Again, like I mentioned earlier, I'm doing the same things, but I never seen myself gain so much weight as I now I do give myself grace. I did lose a child. We did go through the pandemic. All these things, trauma, it impacts the body, and it does we carry that with us. So if anybody out there feeling some kind of way about the way menopause is hitting them, or maybe again you're like me, you're in those menopausal waters, just tippy toeing in. There's so many things that we can do. Like I am also taking vitamins, vitamin D. I did the bone density test that you mentioned. So I think it's really important for you guys to put yourself first. Make sure that you schedule your own testing, as well as you're scheduling other people, as you're scheduling ministry, as you're scheduling work, as you're scheduling other people. Make sure that you schedule yourself.
That's right.
One of my mentors, she says, to pencil yourself into your schedule. And when someone asks you if they can take that time, hey, are you available Friday at whatever time? And you already scheduled that for yourself. You say, no, I'm not available. You ain't lying. You're not available. You're taking care of yourself. That's self-care. And it's really important that women do that. So we've talked about all these changes, the different things that women are going through, the hot flashes, the night sweats, which is another thing. But what are some of the emotional and psychological things that some women have to deal with when it comes to these menopausal waters? So this is the ocean of menopause. And some of us are on the shoreline, and some of us are dipping in a little bit more. What are some of those things that women can also be on the lookout for?
Yeah. So listen, first of all, I want to say you are in control in how you cope with this. So one of the things that happened to us, right, is think about it when you were a teenager and you got your period for the first time, right? Things were crazy, right? You got an influx of it was the opposite of what's happening to you now, right? So what you need to do is say, I haven't lost control of my life or my body. How am I going to cope with this transition? How am I going to cope with this change? It's very important that we get our mindset in the right place. And give yourself, like you were saying, give yourself the grace that you're going through a transition. Give yourself the time to adjust, right? I got to tell you, some of the husband out there, I feel like they need to get a medal because what we put them through, at least I can speak for my own husband, right? First of all, I see him with 3 blankets at night because I'm like, bring down that AC, right? It's like we have to make sure that we give ourselves the grace and the space to do that. But I know you're gonna put about the books, but there's a book called The Menopause Brain by Dr. Massioni. That's another very good book. And basically, she tells you you're not crazy, right? The emotions that you're going through.
Let's just give a praise break.
Let's give a praise break because there's a physiology. there's physiology changing in the brain, Liz. In her book, she gives scans of what happens in the brain when someone either goes through perimenopause or menopause. And you see in the scans that there are changes, right? It doesn't mean that things get dumbed down for us. It doesn't mean that we can't handle it. But just think about while the body is coping and the body is trying to adjust to your new normal, you have to give it some grace and let it absorb. Also, don't be afraid to ask for help. Listen, there's no shame, right? We were saying before, this can be a very vulnerable time in our lives, and maybe we need a little extra help. Maybe we need a little bit more than we've needed before. I can tell you that for me, I went through a sadness that was very out of character for me because I'm always the glass half full person. And all of a sudden it was half empty. And I'm like, who is this person? That's not me, right? So you know that something is changing and you need to be more intentional in what brings you joy. Do the things that truly bring you joy. Um, at the I want to tell you at the height of my of when I was transitioning, I would say that now I'm probably about 3 years in, Liz, in my menopause journey. Um, I was offered an incredible job, right? And when you talk about the emotional state, I didn't know if I was able to take it because I didn't feel smart enough. I didn't feel that I was understanding things. People were talking to me and I had to take a moment to process what they were saying. Where before I was very sharp. I felt like I was a learning machine. Now I need to read that paragraph 3 times to see what it is that it's trying
Yes,
to tell me, right? So it was just like, what do I do? Like, do I stay in the comfy job that I can do with my eyes closed? Or do I take a challenge at the time that I'm going through a transitional change within my own body, right? And I have to tell you, it takes a real hit on your self-confidence. And I don't want to disregard that. This is this is a difficult time, right? And if you're flying through it with great colors, listen, kudos to you, right? And I'm happy for you, but not everyone is going through the same experience.
yeah,
We're all very different in how our hormones are fluctuating, right? So not only do we need to give ourselves grace, we need to give grace to others that may be going through it. I found that when I was younger, and now in hindsight, I had some older leaders, and I would be like, what is wrong with her? I told her that 3 times, right? Like, why can't you remember that I sent her that email? Now that I'm going through it, I said, oh my goodness, this woman was going through menopause,
yeah.
right? Her moodiness was part of her menopause. She was really struggling during that period of time. So I got to tell you, it's really something that we have to ease into it easily. But one of the things that Dr. Mazzoni also cites is a British study that was done on the emotional health, meaning the satisfaction and how happy women feel, right? And there is a clear decline leading up to menopause, meaning in your perimenopause stage, your happiness, your job, your life satisfaction starts to decline, right? When you hit menopause, right? When you think it's the end of the world, this is really hell on earth here. Guess what? Your life satisfaction starts to go up every year.
Hmm.
We found this in the study. So what I'm saying to you is give yourself a break. Emotionally, you may not be where you want to be, or you may not be where you were yesterday, but you will come out of this. Studies show that we will get back to a good place. I don't know if you've met some of the older ladies, and I'm talking about like 20 years older than us, and they're like just happy go lucky. Like nothing matters, right? Like they're just loving life. They're much easier. They're less tense. So studies show that we do regain that happiness in our life.
Well, that's good to know. I feel like if it's going to be difficult, I want to be happy. You know what I mean? And again, I think, we're definitely those kind of people that are always reading, always trying to, have that, personal development, trying to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, to quote
Right.
the prophet Biggie. Um, but I just think that sometimes we could get lost in this. There's so many things going on. Life in general. If you have, again, some trauma that hits you, and then you're also going through this process, wherever you are in the menopausal waters. But another thing that I know that is important during this time is the changes of diet and exercise, right? So this is something myself that I also am dealing with, because, like I mentioned, I was still eating the same things I've always have, and they never used to make me get so big. But now I am the heaviest I've ever been. Confession time, people. The heaviest, the heaviest I've ever been. And when I went to the OBGYN, and they weighed me, I was like, oh, you must, let's do this
My
again.
shoes. It's my shoes.
Yeah, I was like, you're gonna take some weight off, right? Because I have my shoes on, right? And they were like, yeah, we take some off. But I know inside of me, I knew that what would counted for maybe about 2 pounds. So it was still high. And I was just like, oh my goodness, I am heading in the wrong direction, and I need to do something. So I kind of went into like a full panic mode, because again, like, I feel different, and I can't. I'd never imagined myself being the weight that I am in now. Never. And I'm only 5'2". I'm little. So I should be skinny. As a matter of fact, my maiden name is Delgado, that I can't even use it, because that means skinny in Spanish. So I can't even use it. So I've been trying to, and one of my sorority sisters, actually, she's been going through this journey, and she saw my struggle when I posted about it, and she came out and she said, I'm going to help you through this too, and she's giving me suggestions and things like that. But I realized too, when you're busy, you have to really be intentional. So I use Fitness Pal. My son uses it. She recommended it as well. My doctor's name is Dr. Lina Echeverria, and she's from Memorial Miramar. I don't want you all to be going there so that I can't get an appointment, though. No, I'm only joking. She's great. She sits with you. I mean, she goes through your blood test, like boom, boom, boom. And so she's wonderful. And again, check your insurance. Make sure that that these people are covered under your insurance. And someone else had asked a question before I get
Bone
into
density, I believe.
bone density.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Bone density is normally covered by insurance. It's seen as a preventative care.
and
So
I did that too.
yeah,
I did that too. And they said everything was fine. But again, these are things like you have to have yearly. Like I usually do all my yearlies, try to do it in April, which is my birthday month, an easy way to remember. Um,
exactly.
or you could do it in the beginning of the year, every January, things like that. Whatever is going to help you to remember. But I'm being very intentional about what I'm eating. And it's super hard. But I think we have to put it in our minds that it's just going to be that way. I remember when years ago they had told me that I was pre-diabetic. So you were talking about A1C,
Yeah.
and that was the first time I ever heard of A1C. And they put me on metmorphin years ago, and I changed my diet, and they took me off of it because they said, you're doing well. And I remember my doctor said, he said, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because your blood tests are great. And it's really important, because if we don't do it, I used to tell myself, if I was eating something, that I'm Puerto Rican, people, I eat rice and beans. I love my rice and beans. I love my carbs. And when they used to tell me, like, you got to lay off the carbs, I would be like, like, you're talking to a Puerto Rican here. And I remember at that time, I said, you know what? If I eat this, I'm gonna die. I mean, that's how I basically psyched myself out. It's a brain thing, like I said, if I eat this, now it's not that you can't eat it ever. It's just that we are so used to eating it all the time. And so we have to be really intentional. So this Monday, actually, after all the stuff that happened last week, I started with intentionally again, tracking what I'm eating. And Lord, it's a big deal, because you realize how much we overeat just by going over here, doing that.
Yeah.
So and of course I have my bottled water. I'm trying to drink a gallon of water, and it's so hard to drink water too.
I like it in a pretty bottle. It makes me
Yeah.
feel better.
I have to get me a pretty one. I got me a Publix water bottle. I gotta get me a pretty one. But it's really, all of these things are really important because we're important. We are important, and we have to, put that in our minds as well. So, what are some of the things that you can recommend for women to, help with their diet?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about exercise because that's also, not such a sexy topic, but
No.
that's also needed for us,
Yes.
right? So strength training, weights. Ladies, we're not used to doing this, right? It doesn't come naturally, especially for us Latinas. It's like, what? We don't want to look like a man. We don't want muscles. We're not talking about muscles. We need the weights or some kind of resistance because guess what? Your muscles are protecting your bones. So it's very important that you also do things that protect your bones, right? And your muscle. You don't want to lose muscle. Muscle, you need muscle, right? Get walking. As easy as that is, walk around the neighborhood, get walking. Liz, I got to tell you, my A1C was borderline. And I had a coach that I got for free from my insurance company. And he's like, "Have you tried walking?" And I said, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "Try walking and see what happens." I got myself one of those little treadmills on Amazon and I started hitting my steps on a daily basis. And the next time I went, my A1C dropped like 3 points. And it was just by walking. I didn't change my diet. It was the walking that helped because when you're walking, guess what? Your body is going to look for the glucose for energy. So it's going to burn it as you're walking. So it helps you. And it seems like some easy things that we can definitely incorporate into our day, right? So diet. You talked a little bit about water. At least get half your body weight in ounces, at least half, right? As far as like how many ounces you should be drinking a day. And these are things that, again, they seem pretty obvious and simple, but you should be talking to your doctor because there may be other things. There may be a medical history where you shouldn't be drinking so much water. So I want to make sure that all these things that I'm mentioning, that you make sure that you clear through your doctor, right? If you don't have full kidney function, you shouldn't be drinking a gallon of water a day, right? So things like that, I want to make sure that we're aware. Increase your fiber intake. We don't eat enough fiber, right? I didn't even talk about constipation that also comes as part of menopause, right? Increase your fiber. We should be having 25 grams of fiber a day. So whether it's you make sure that you take it through the food that you're eating or have a supplement that's going to make sure that you fill that in. You're not going to like this next one that I want to say. Yeah, you got to limit your caffeine.
So I started doing that too. I only have one cup of coffee a day.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm trying to reduce my sugar too. So
That's right. Reduce your sugar. Make sure you limit your caffeine. Caffeine, guess what? It interrupts your sleep. Maybe it didn't when you were younger, but now it impacts you, right? And it can make you jittery. It can make you moody. So you really need to control your caffeine intake, and that's whether you're having a soft. It's not only coffee, right? There's caffeine and other things. So we need to make sure that we watch our caffeine. What has worked for me, I'm not a big coffee drinker, but I do enjoy a cup of coffee. So what I've done is I drink tea during the week and I drink coffee on the weekends. It's almost like my treat for the weekend. So it's almost like a little like a dessert almost, right? A treat that I give myself for being good throughout the week. Protein, you need to increase your protein intake. That's something that you were talking about carbs. Sometimes we look at the carbs and forget about the proteins that we need, right? If you're not a big meat eater, find other ways to get your protein in because you should be also looking into how much protein you take in. It makes you feel fuller, right? It's going to help you not be as hungry because that's another thing we all of a sudden, I don't know if it's happened to you, but it's like, why am I so hungry? Why am I eating and I don't feel full, right? So protein will help you get through that. And it also helps you preserve your muscles, right? So get your protein in. The other one might also be a little unpopular, but you need to either limit or eliminate your alcohol.
yeah,
Guess our body is not processing alcohol the same anymore.
that's right.
right? And even if your alcohol, even if it was one, I mean, I was always a one glass girl, like
Mhm.
never more than that.
Mhm.
It wasn't, it was when I went out, it was never in the home. Um, I can't do that anymore because it's going to interrupt my sleep. Yes, it's going to put me to sleep, but guess what? At 3 a.m., I'm going to be wide awake. And I know that it's linked to that.
Mhm.
There's so many women that I'm hearing that even some of the younger women are dropping the alcohol altogether because they're feeling better without it, right? Limit your sugar intake. You talked about that. Processed foods. This country, I think we're the country that eats the most processed foods.
Right.
I mean, some of our processed foods is not even allowed in other countries. They've banned some of the food that we eat and that we give to our children.
Right.
So let's try to limit the amount of processed foods, right? Um,
Right.
eat more vegetables.
I'm trying to. I'm trying. I got some broccoli, and I'm like, Lord, give me wisdom how to make this taste good.
And you're gonna, you know what? You know what the secret's gonna be? It's gonna be your sazon. So don't try to go with broccoli the way everyone else does.
Mhm.
What seasoning do you like? And try recipes with broccoli or green beans or whatever it be with the seasonings that you already know you enjoy, right? Um, vegetables, lean meats. The Mediterranean diet has been popular for a very long time. Like
Right.
other fats come in and out, but the Mediterranean has always been there. Your nuts, right? Your beans. Like try to eat a balanced diet. You eat a balanced diet and you'll be okay.
Yeah.
So is the weight going to come off? Maybe not. I'm totally honest with you, right? It will eventually, but it may not at the same speed that it did when you were younger.
Right.
But you know that you're putting in healthy things into your body. So you're helping your organs, you're helping your heart, and then the weight will catch up.
Yeah.
And I say do it 80-90% of the time, Liz, because we need that little piece of cheesecake every once in a while.
Yeah. You don't want to be in prison. I think the way to do
Yeah.
it is that are rewarding yourself, like you said. Like me and my husband are trying to. He's always been this way. He's doing good. He doesn't eat rice. Like it's no fun to cook in my house anymore because you don't want to eat rice, and all this other stuff. And he definitely tries not to eat bread and all that stuff. So, and now I'm trying to do the same thing. So if I do have something that's like a bread, I'll have the Ezekiel bread,
Okay.
things like that. We have fresh vegetables and stuff like that that are already chopped up. We have fruits in the refrigerator. We try to buy only for the week because
Yeah.
it wastes. But I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier too about muscle, because when I went to the doctor and he was talking to me about that, and this is why I'm trying to get eat better too. He told me that my A1C was up, and to watch my cholesterol, and I'm not in alarming rates, but he told me to watch it. He told me
Right.
to,
Yeah.
so that's enough for me. And so I think one of the things he mentioned to me, he says, if you want to, I could give you medicine. I could give you something to help you lose weight. I think I told you about this. And
Yeah.
I want to share this with everyone because I know that the easiest thing to do is to get medicine. And I'm not judging nobody because you do what's best for you. But since you mentioned muscle, a lot of the medications that they're offering now, Zepic, Wegovy, Manjaro, and some others, they basically take your muscle. And for the long term, if you're going to be on it, you don't want to be on it long term.
Right.
And some of the reports that are coming out, because remember, as they have been putting this stuff out there, they've been studying it because they don't have that many years of doing this. Originally some of these medications were for diabetics. They're doing these studies to see like how is it going, what's the long-term effects. They still don't have all the results of that, but one of the things that they have said is that in order for you to continue to lose weight, you're going to have to be on it long term, and if not, you're going to gain the weight back. And if you are then you're going to lose a lot of muscle, and that's not going to be good for you. So I told him no, for other reasons, which I mentioned to you as well. But again, if you are doing it, really consult with your doctor. Make sure you're not doing it for the long term,
Right.
and that you are monitoring your blood results, because that's how they determine if it's even impacting your liver, your kidney, and things like that. So that's super important. And again, there's so many tools out there will help you with with your dieting. Again, I use Fitness Pal. It tells me how many calories I still have left. I celebrate when I have a little bit extra, a little bit extra. And my son, he's into that too, and he's like, yeah, but you should be eating up into your calorie. You don't want to always have a lot. So I
Right.
have all these people around me sharing about that. But again, be mindful that you are important, that you matter, that God put you here for a reason, and you can't do the things He put you on here for if we're not healthy.
Yeah.
I'm talking to myself too.
Yeah.
And so
And
that's
another thing, Liz, that I've noticed, and some of the people that are listening to us may have noticed, is that you start to grow these get these intolerances to foods that you never had before. And for example, I only can hit a certain threshold of dairy before I don't feel good because I've had dairy. And I've noticed the same thing with pork. And pernil is a big thing for us, right? And I can't overdo it. And we may be seeing that there's some changes, and it's our bodies changing, our bodies asking for better quality food and less of it.
Mhm,
Right?
mhm.
Your bodies listen to what your body is telling you.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I've noticed that myself, even with meat. So I think that's important. I do want to get to some of the book recommendations since we're at 7:51 now.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'm gonna just share them. The
Yeah,
first one is the one that you might recommended, the new menopause.
yeah.
And the other one is the menopause brain, which
So great books, great books. The new menopause actually just came out by Dr. Mary Claire Haver. Follow her on social media if you don't, because she is a board certified doctor that has done so much study into menopause. And in this book, you can basically, the way she's written it is you can, and a lot of the stuff, a lot of the information that I shared with your viewers today is information that I've gotten from multiple sources, but including her book, right? And one of the things is that you can look up some kind of ailment that you're having, and she will tell you what things to do or what numbers to look out for. And you can look it up by illness. So it's really good, and how to prevent things, right? She goes from a scientific and a medical way, but mentions it in a very easy to understand, not all the science jargon, right? That would turn you off about a book. The menopause brain, I was intrigued by. That's also a newer book because it was just like, how could this be happening to, like, what is happening to me? Why don't I feel smart enough anymore? Right. Um, and she breaks it down very, very well too. Hers is a little more science based, right? She's a PhD, and but she does really well at explaining to you what's happening. And there's been a lot of links to menopause and Alzheimer's. And when they linked it back to women, there was a clear link as to some things that we can do to prevent, right? Alzheimer's based on how we handle these years during menopause.
wow, that's amazing. So definitely, pick it up. I do
I don't
have.
get anything. Free advertisement for these authors, right?
Yeah, right, right. We don't have any book deals or
No
anything like
book
that.
deals. No, no, no.
No referral money. But there's another one that I want to mention too, and it's this one,
Mm,
Seven Transforming Gifts of Menopause. And it's an unexpected spiritual journey. Because I know a lot of times we're
yes.
looking at all this and we've been talking a lot about the science and all
Yeah.
the different things that impacts our body, but it's also a spiritual journey. That's what she mentions here. She's a well-known scholar actually in the Pentecostal community. And she talks about how the menopause is framed just as a biological event, but it's also spiritual and emotional. And
Sure.
she says that we get gifts. So we've been talking about some of the things that no, that we don't really find as gifts. But she talks about how we get self-acceptance. We learn to embrace ourselves, which is what you were saying too about these older women. They're just living life carefree. Well, I think it's because of that. They've been just very they've embraced themselves. They're comfortable in their skin.
Been intentional, right? I think we need to be intentional. And that's what I was saying. We are in control of our feelings.
Yes,
Don't use
exactly.
the excuse that, oh my gosh, I'm going through menopause. Now that's an excuse.
Right.
Don't use that excuse. It's not very sexy. It's not cute.
Yeah, no, exactly. Don't use it on your husband, okay?
No.
I check with my husband all the time. Am I being a little moody? And so far, I haven't been in the moody side. I think he told me. I believe I heard him say that I have not been moody, but
Could be
um,
your memory, Liz, but yeah, we'll see.
memory. Oh, he says something great info for the men to have awareness about this, and my job is to keep my wife happy, to
Yeah.
help me whatever it takes. I love my hubby. I love him so much. And yes, uh, I try to, not make him
You know
crazy.
what? Hiram brings up a great point,
Mhm.
and that is educate your man. If you are a married woman, please don't hide what you're going through.
Yes,
Please don't be explosive and then expect him to know why you're being explosive. Where is this coming from? Right? Um, don't tell him that he's a liar, that he mentioned something to you just because you're the one that forgot about it. Right? So bring him on this journey. It could be, and let's not forget that men go through a certain change themselves, right?
yes,
So they can appreciate that we're changing together. Like,
right.
make it a couple thing as
Yeah,
opposed
I
to
think
just
that's
one of us.
great. Great point, because I feel that we are going through this. We keep saying, I keep telling him, "You have me on my prime." That's what I keep telling him. He responds in the best way possible. Your prime is now. Okay, man, take notes. Take notes, man. But I think that it is like you have to show each other grace, because there's things that are happening in both of sides. But going back to this book, I appreciated it. This was one of the first books that I read. It was recommended on Twitter, what is now X. And I felt like some of those things, some of those gifts I was already walking in, because she talks about authenticity too, that you live, authentically. I try to do that. She says that you find courage, to face your fears, and you look at challenges with a different perspective, because you realize that you have more time behind you than in front of you.
Mm,
So that's another thing. And then also look at this, like, you gain community, you recognize the importance of the people that are in your circle, the connections that you have throughout your life. So she talks that usually when you're entering this menopausal kind of like this age stage, right? Of things, that you start to reflect on all these things. She talks about another gift is vision, that you gain a clearer vision for your life purpose and
that's
in your
right.
future direction, which I want to just like park there for a minute, because I
Yeah,
feel like sometimes women, and you said that we are in charge of our mindset, how we think, and our thinking helps us to direction and take steps. And I just find that sometimes women are just existing, and the Lord knows my prayer is I do not want to just exist, you know. I felt like it when I was going through the challenges of going through the grief process. I definitely wanted to crawl under a rock, but the way I'm wired is like, I'm here for a reason, and I have to continue moving forward. And
listen, we have these great experiences, right? We've stepped into this transition not without all these experiences that we've learned, and we become now these women that have all this knowledge to share with others.
sabiduría y los pelitos blancos unas veces.
The wisdom that comes with this faith,
That's right.
right?
That's another gift. That's
That's
another
a gift.
gift.
That's a gift. And if we're going to go to the Bible, how many women were used during that time, right, to bring on wisdom to others? So let's not forget that this is not. I'm not good for anything anymore. It's just this. It's just the beginning of a different phase in your life. So how are you going to embrace this new phase?
I love that, and I think that for people that are in churches, most sometimes people are put to pasture. I've mentioned this a few times on many of my posts, and I think that it's really important for people in the various stages of aging, that they continue to be used for their wisdom. Maybe they're not as fast, so they're not going to be part of your setup team. Church planters out there. Um,
Right.
they don't have the strength to do that anymore. They don't want to. They've done it, and they're just older, but they have still something to share. So tap into what the people that are a little older have to share. Another thing she mentions is that another gift is that we embrace change during the menopausal years a little bit better. because we realize again that there's these highlights in our life that we could look back on and say, wow, you know what? God has been with me through all these different things, all these things that I thought were going to take me out, all these things that people counted me out for. And here I am still believing, still trusting. And so I agree with her that that's a beautiful book.
And Liz, I would
Mhm.
also add, we're not trying to prove ourselves anymore, right? Been there, done that.
That's right.
So, you know, it would be very remiss for churches not to take the wisdom of folks of this generation or this age, right? That have all this experience, and that we're not out to look for their jobs. We're not out to get your job, right? We're here to support you and be there for you.
That's right. That's right. Well, we're willing to take some questions. If there's any questions out there, if you have a question, go ahead and put it in the chat. I think we've answered some of the questions that were already in the chat. Again, check with your insurance. You mentioned earlier too, Sylvia, that you got a coach through your insurance. And I've been seeing that a lot on social media that insurances are providing even a dietitian to help you with your diet.
Yeah,
So look into what your insurance offers you. Take advantage of everything that your insurance is willing to offer.
that's right.
Any other comments, Sylvia, that you would want to share with our audience before we
No,
close?
listen, I know this is going to be several parts long, right? We're going to talk about, I know tonight we didn't get to talk about some of the HRT and some of the hormone replacement therapy that's out there. We'll get to talk about it in a future session, right? So that's really important. I think we hit on the main things, and it's like, yes, acknowledge that you are going through a change, but also embrace it, right? Embrace this change. Your attitude's going to make all the difference in how your body even deals with some of the changes that it's going through.
Yes, and again, we did this because it's an important thing to discuss. There's no shame in this. This shouldn't be something that we're discussing behind closed doors, even though you can get a little bit deeper behind closed doors.
And we
But
do, we do.
and we do. We usually close out restaurants when we do it. Um, but it's just really important for us to have this community of people that are watching, men and women, because men should be aware of this too, like you mentioned. But check us out again. We're going to be having another part to this next week, and another one at the end of the month. So make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you get alerted to when we're going to have a new session, or when we post up a new session. And also, if you want to, I usually send out a personal email of all the things that I'm working on and doing personally. It's not related to anything, just me personal. So if you want to be a little bit in my inner circle through email, go ahead and subscribe to my email as well. I don't go crazy. I just do it once a month. And again, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you, Sylvia, for sharing your wisdom with us today. I look forward to having you back so we can talk a little bit more about some of the other things that we didn't discuss today. And again, God bless you. Thank you for being with us. Share, like, and remember, we're going to get through this.
We're
God
gonna,
bless you.
that's right.